Hi, today I'll be talking about unleashing procurement possibilities using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and dynamic data. So here's an interesting stat that amazes me still to this day because this is quite a few years old. But in 2018, Alibaba sold $1 billion worth of merchandise in the first minute and 25 seconds of Singles Day. And for those of you who don't know, Singles Day is pretty well the largest e-commerce event, definitely in Asia, and if not the world. And so they were able to achieve this level of scale by innovating and using artificial intelligence technologies throughout their supply chain and in multiple points throughout their supply chain, from procurement all the way to the logistics side of things. And so Alibaba has been a pioneer in this space for a very long time, particularly using artificial intelligence technologies, and has been able to massively transform their procurement operations and achieve this level of scale in a way that was just not possible before. So Gartner identified a number of potential opportunities where AI can actually transform the procurement function beyond just simply on the supply chain side. There are 17 here identified, and I've circled 3, which we found a lot of CPOs on the field are asking us about. The reason being is that they see massive transformational opportunities here and return on value, but also it's a function of where TealBook plays and the use cases that we tackle. And so spend analytics, consistent with the research, this is a top one for us as well. Supplier discovery, very important, and then supplier risk management. So in terms of spend categorization for spend analytics, this is a key area that we see and we've heard, and as well as Gartner, a lot of opportunity for applying this advanced methods, particularly in the AI space. So Avalara is a company that does many things, but one of them that we found very useful from a procurement perspective was their ability to map product descriptions. So if you have a large product catalog and descriptions of each of those items, mapping those to what we call what are called HS codes. And so those are the standard taxonomy that's used for import-export pretty well across the world. And so what this means is doing this automatically at scale enables companies to really understand not only complying with the manifest requirements in terms of import-export, but from a planning and supply chain strategy perspective, how do you understand where best to source materials, where to manufacture it, and where to sell it relative to the tariff and tax regimes of different countries? And so you can really optimize and configure your supply chain to take advantage of these opportunities. Doing this manually before, to a certain degree, was possible, but required a heavy lift from a lot of people. And for example, one of past clients of mine's, GE, used to do this for their manufacturing division, where they had hundreds of people offshore simply looking up these HS codes and mapping to the products. So the ability to do this autonomously and automatically really changes the game and accelerates a company's ability to be more agile in their supply chain. Another area with respect to spend analytics and how AI can change the game there is in understanding company hierarchies. So company hierarchies, what the important piece here is the ability for a buyer to understand how to roll up different subsidiaries up to an ultimate beneficiary or an ultimate parent. And what that allows procurement professionals to do is provide you with visibility into total spend with a single entity. As if you actually look at the information raw, you may not know that there are multiple subsidiaries that you're working with that actually roll up to a single entity. And so this potentially provides the opportunity to get better leverage with your vendors and understand how your total spend is with the different providers in your landscape. And so doing this autonomously, again, is very important because a company like Sayari, who's a small startup based in Washington, they use advanced AI methods or natural language processing techniques combined with knowledge graphs to scan a host of different unstructured documents to create the company hierarchy tree. And so doing this autonomously and making sure that it's kept up to date relative to how things are changing, as there's many mergers and acquisitions out there, really helps ensure that this information is accurate as possible over time. And so if this is done, then you simply map your spend according to your vendor base, and then see how that rolls up to the different ultimate parents and provides you with that visibility into your total spend. Another key area where spend analytics is transformed by AI is invoice data extraction. And I know this sounds very generic, but really what this means is having the ability to automatically extract line item invoice data, classify it, and then tally it up across your entire set of invoices, which could be in the millions, easily in the millions, depending on your size of your supplier base, but it can run up quite fast, very easily. And so doing this autonomously really allows you to, at a granular level, understand where you're spending, what you're spending your money on, and then also aggregate that spend in the right categories that make sense. And so invoice data extraction, particularly given the fact that invoices are very, very noisy data, even though there's a level of structure to them, the variety of invoices explodes quickly with the number of suppliers you have. And so applying AI against this problem really changes the game there and allows procurement professionals to really, really deeply understand where they're spending their money and normalizing how the different product categories or descriptions in terms of understanding how you're spending it relative to those different categories and how things are described. And so one area that really is interesting to make this a little more tangible is understanding your carbon footprint. Making the relationship between invoice data extraction and carbon footprint, there's a couple other companies out there that do the extraction, particularly for utility bills. So these bills come in certain formats. They are very specialized in terms of the types of line items that are on those bills. So specializing in that and having systems or intelligent systems to extract that information need to be highly trained against that. And so there's a company called GLYNT or Glint that does this. And so if you input or feed it your invoice, your utility bills or utility invoices, it can extract that information logically and then tally up that data such that you can understand your energy usage in terms of dollars spent. And that, to a sense, gives you an understanding of your carbon footprint. And another startup that we've been talking to uses the same AI methods or approach to do a different way to calculate carbon emissions, which is quite interesting as well, in the sense that based on where you're buying your products or sourcing your materials and the point of destination of where it's arriving, it looks at the invoices, extracts the line items from those invoices, the cost of those items, and then also the location of where those things are coming from, and then understands the point of destination. And so with that information, it can then infer if you're shipping certain things from point A to point B, what's the potential carbon footprint for that? And then when you aggregate that over your entire manufacturing or whatever you're procuring and how you're shipping goods and services or goods around the world, they can calculate your carbon footprint using that information. And so doing that at scale again really is only possible using automation. And if it's rules-based automation, there's a level of accuracy there. But with AI, it definitely ups the game in terms of the ability to really manage noisy data or unstructured information. And so you can see there, I laid out a few other companies that do this. The left side is more the traditional players who've been using various technologies over the years, from OCR to extraction methods and things like that, to some newer players who really have disrupted the space. And the reason why I bring this up is because with modern AI techniques, there really has been a change in the game in terms of how this is done, and it's much more effective now in terms of accuracy and scale. And so people like Google, Nuance, who's been bought by Microsoft, and Amazon, definitely have changed the game and really introduced new capabilities that were just simply not possible before. And another important use case that I highlighted in the Gartner study was supplier risk management. Understanding the risk profile of your suppliers is an important step in the onboarding process. And so Fiscal Note uses advanced AI methods, particularly natural language processing, to scan millions of government documents to really understand the legislative and policy decisions and how that impacts your supply chain, and particularly your supplier base. Risk Recon is another company with a focus on cybersecurity. So they scan the technology environments of your supplier base and then calculate a risk score using, again, a level of AI technologies to determine what is the cyber risk of working with that particular supplier. And here at TealBook, naturally, us being an AI-first company, we use AI throughout our platform and our technology, from the ingestion side of things, where we scan multiple sources of information from unstructured public data to first-party data to supplier networks and even crowdsourced information, to how we process our data. So once it comes in, there's a lot of massaging and manipulation that we do to make sure that we can arrive at what you see there as a universal supplier profile. And so this is an important aspect and an important asset for TealBook in terms of creating that using artificial intelligence methods. And then finally, from the distribution side of things, in terms of how do we disseminate this information, how do we create advanced analytics or proprietary insights that are useful for our clients. So going back again to the study, in terms of the highlights, one area that we also participate in or do well in is applying AI on the classification again. And so we have AI tools or models that extract tags from various sources for particular suppliers. And then what we do is infer the NAICS code, which is an industry classifier or standard industry classifier in North America, to enable companies or people to classify their spending profiles across their supplier base, such that they can then compare spend between different companies. And then on the other side of things, and Gartner highlighted this as an emerging and large opportunity in the procurement transformation journey, is supplier discovery. And so we use AI techniques to really understand similar suppliers, which essentially allows a user to then discover new suppliers relative to their current supplier base. So if you are working with vendor X and they provide you with certain types of goods and services, if you do a search in our platform, we will provide you with a list of similar suppliers in that space who also provide you similar goods and services lined up with your target suppliers. So this is an interesting thing, and we use similar techniques that are used by Google, in the sense that it's knowledge graphs and neural networks that enable us to really understand similar suppliers, not just using keywords, which is more of a rules-based approach, but more on soft criteria, and that is robust and can infer different characteristics of these companies, and ensure that when you're looking for one type of supplier, that we can actually match it and find similar suppliers that actually do in fact deliver similar services and goods. It's important to note that I've been talking about many of the types of use cases that focus on the upstream parts of the procurement value chain, but AI definitely impacts and can add value across the entire procurement value chain, from sourcing to payment. And like I did mention before, it was 17 use cases. So you can see here, there's quite a few AI use cases that are mapped out across this value chain, from advanced contract analysis, product recommendations, AP invoice automation. So the point here is that AI definitely, when used strategically, can hit different points of this value chain and incrementally drive that transformation. And when taken in aggregate, really changes the game for the procurement process and can really drive significant value for the organization. But what's important to note is, AI depends on data. And this is one of the key points for any AI professional who's really gone through a production level project would know, is that there are previous studies that shows that up to 80% of the time on a project can be spent just fixing data. And so this adds major risk to any project. And honestly, this is really can be genericized to any software project. But in AI, it's particularly acute in the sense that AI models really are dependent heavily on the data that you input into those systems. And therefore, the rigor around ensuring that the data is clean, that it's correct, that it's labeled and augmented is very important to ensuring that these models work effectively. And so the risk profile of an AI project can be and has been traditionally increased. And so there's many companies in the space who are trying to solve this problem and compress that time spent on implementing AI projects, and TealBook being one of them, in the sense that we focus on supplier data. And so there's other companies that do data augmentation in terms of helping create additional data sets for training. There's many companies that do data labeling, which is the ability to actually automatically label data for the types of AI methods that use supervised methods for training the models. And so when you're looking at an AI project and when you're trying to understand where best to optimize, the data step really becomes an obvious area where you can really achieve efficiencies to drive the potential that you can realize through these AI projects. And unfortunately, as in the blue part there, that's where all the realization happens. And you can see that's just a smaller part of the pie. And so if we can accelerate time to getting to that point and really testing these models in the real world, then not only do you reduce the risk of these projects, but you can realize the benefits of this, the transformational benefits of AI technology, as I showed earlier, in terms of what's possible. And so I think it's important to note that artificial intelligence technologies definitely offer this great opportunity. It's important to capitalize on that. How do we minimize that risk of doing so? And this data problem, actually, when we're taken into the procurement industry, is particularly acute. And so this diagram, although it's rather complicated, the key message here is that procurement software definitely sell the fact they can transform the procurement function. However, the big part that they fail to really highlight is that it's heavily dependent, again, on data. So even though these are transactional systems, and actually some of them do have some AI capabilities within them, that dependency on data is really important and a critical part of the deployment phase of these software tools. And so, great, you went out and bought SAP Ariba or Coupa or like STP product. You've got the implementation partner lined up, and then now you're implementing and configuring your processes. But how do you actually enable those processes? How do you start transacting in that system? Well, you need to fill it with good data. And so the standard answer that a lot of these providers offer is through a portal-based approach. But if you really think about that approach, it quickly becomes obvious that it's an untenable way to collect this type of information. And I could walk you through a few examples. So if we talk about a large supplier out there like CDW or FedEx or UPS, with whom they have thousands of customers, if for every customer, every time they land a new customer, they have to fill out a portal with a multitude of a set of information about who they are, where their locations are, other critical information that a buyer needs or a customer needs to transact with them. At a one-time activity, sure, for a single customer, that's fine. But imagine doing that every time for every customer and every new customer that they get. So you can quickly see that this portal-based approach becomes very unscalable fast. And then data changes or information changes or things change. And so when that happens, how do you maintain this information over time? So not only did they have to enter it first time into thousands of portals, but then they're going to have to re-enter certain information that has changed into these same thousands of portals. And then finally, some large customers actually have multiple systems. So again, we're exploding the problem even further, where even within a single customer, a supplier may need to enter the same information multiple times for one customer. And then you multiply that over hundreds or thousands of customers, that's just continuously exploding this data problem. And so what you're left with are suppliers that can't keep up essentially with the data needs of their customers. And that limits the promised returns on the digital transformation. This adds manual error-prone workarounds, which could eventually, at the worst case, lead to an operational breakdown. And the sad part here is that both the suppliers and the customers are highly incented and really do want this information to flow. It's just that there's no easy way to do it. And another key thing here to say is, more generally speaking, and this was a study done by Deloitte in 2021, is that procurement digital transformations fail, and the leading cause is bad data. And so, we did talk previous slide to the theory and what we've seen in the market at a limited scale, but on a broader scale, when you survey the market, it's clear that quality of data and the availability of data are critical factors leading to the failures of digital transformations in the procurement space. So essentially, data is really important to driving a successful digital transformation program. So this is where it comes to the future state technology. So how do we solve this data problem? As I pointed out in the previous slide, bad data being the culprit for a lot of failed digital transformations. The key to unlocking that is really decoupling your data from your technology stack. And so this offers 3 key advantages. Number one, increased agility. So the fact that your data is decoupled, this allows you to choose different technologies and actually take advantage of the emerging software that comes to the market that is tuned and fit for purpose along different points of your digital transformation journey. Number two, reduces time to value. So as I talked about in that circle chart, when you're doing an AI project, lots of time spent fixing data. How do you compress that? If you have a good source of trusted supplier data, particularly with procurement systems and AI use cases that are targeted for transforming procurement, then you can accelerate the implementation of those solutions that enables you to then realize value faster. And then finally, and probably most important, is it helps you retain your IP. And what that means is, your supplier network is a critical component to your competitive advantage. As evidenced by Apple, their supplier network, and their specific contractors that they work with, enables them to deliver these products at scale and in a timely fashion. And so being able to carry that data with you as your technology stack evolves, as your business evolves, really enables you to maintain that competitive edge. And so to summarize, digital transformation definitely is a critical piece of any procurement leader's transformation playbook. AI is a key enabler to driving that transformation. And then finally, data. Underlying all that is data as a foundation that can enable both the AI technologies, your technology stack, and the entire journey itself. And circling back to Alibaba, the evidence is clear here in this particular case. This chart is quite amazing in the sense that in the last 10 years, they've managed to grow their gross merchandise volume, or essentially sales, by 100x, which is mind-boggling, actually. And this could be largely attributed to their use of innovative technologies across the board. They use a host, but AI is definitely one of the strategic ones they use. And So they've been able to do that and transform their procurement function in a way that drives these kinds of incredible benefits. So thanks for listening, and I hope you found this useful. And don't forget to smash that like button.